So it's now my absolute pleasure to welcome our amazing keynote speaker to the stage. I think it's fair to say the entire committee was really excited when we confirmed that Karolina Szczur, I hope I got that right, is going to be our keynote speaker, because she's someone that we've all been watching and admiring for a long time. And certainly a lot of the things that we've done as a committee, we've sort of tried to look to her and the stuff that she talks about in organising conferences that are inclusive as guidance. So today, Karolina is going to be talking about Towards a Welcoming Web, and I'd like everyone to give her an enormous round of applause and cheer to welcome her onto the stage.
Hello. Is this on? Good. Hello, Perth. How are you? That's a little bit quiet. Have you had any coffee today? How about we go one more time? Hello, Perth. That's better. It was really great that DDDPerth started with Welcome to the Country. And I would like to personally acknowledge that this presentation is held on the traditional lands of the Newgard Nation, and I do pay my respects to the elders past, present, and emerging. So today we're going to be talking about where the web is today and where is it going to be in the future. The demand for innovation, automation through artificial intelligence, and disruption has never been higher. And in many ways, technology has brought us incredible advancements. It contributed to improving living standards, redefined communications, and the amplification of business opportunity, and much more. So whether we want it or not, technology is reshaping our world. It's economics, culture, democracy, and society as we speak. And I think it's fair to say that every single one of us in this room has benefited for playing a part in this digital revolution. But I'm not here today to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the pitfalls of technology. And I'm here to talk about the negatives. And I'm here to take a critical look at what technology presents today. So we are here today to get a little bit uncomfortable. The cost of said disruption has been significant. We demonstrated that the web had failed instead of served humanity. The increasing centralization has ended up producing a large-scale phenomenon which is anti-human. And I'm not going to tell you who said that just yet, but we are going to come back to this quote later within the talk. So what's so unhuman about the web? I mean, we just said that it contributed to so many great things, and we're all so excited, and it surely brings a lot of positivity and innovation into the world. What's so anti-human? Well, technology negatively affects mental health. Social media especially is known to negatively affect mental health through low self-esteem, anxiety, depression, FOMO, feelings of loneliness, which feels a little bit weird because there are so many people that we can reach through technology. And the more time we spend on social media, the more unhappy we get. Technology, especially social media, has also become a platform for harassment. Victimizing, shaming, trolling, doxxing, and that has driven a lot of people away, mainly from underrepresented groups. And I think those examples speak for themselves. And I could go on. Personal data has become currency, sold to advertisers, and sometimes even weaponized to alter election results, like in the infamous Cambridge Analytica and Facebook scandal. In many cases, if a product is free, you as a user are a product. Data breaches have become very frequent, leaking billions of users' information such as giants like Yahoo, Equifax, Uber, due to their poor security practices. And that's not only specific for Silicon Valley. It happens everywhere. And some of those companies covered up those incidents without alerting people who were susceptible to those breaches. Until a year later, they had no idea. In many cases, reality can be mended and manipulated towards commercial goals. This is an example from an Australian GP booking platform called Health Engine that altered 20,000 patient reviews to sound positive. And this is the original one. The doctor I saw was terrible, but luckily I received another opinion, and the receptionist nurse was lovely, which is why I would go back. But that became, the receptionist was lovely. So you see the level of manipulation. This is only one example. The tech industry's toxic culture is actively driving people away, especially members of underrepresented groups. And this isn't a problem that's unique to technology. It's something that prevails everywhere. But rampant unfairness is something that's reported way more in tech industry than non-tech industries. Accordingly to Tech Lever's study, 78% of tech workers report some form of unfairness towards them. Accordingly to a new study by Reveal, only 0.8% of Black women hold jobs in the tech industry. Only 6% of Fortune 500 chief executives are women. 98% of VCs are white or Asian men. 29% is the average pay gap between men and women. 60% of women report unwanted sexual advances in their workplace. 30% of women of color were passed over for a promotion for no reason. According to GitHub surveys, 95% of open source contributors are men. So these are just few consequences of that rapid technological growth. So in my opinion, our industry is really facing a crisis, trying to figure out, well, who takes responsibility for this? Who fixes this? What should we do? And one of the reasons why we got here is because we've disregarded the negative impact of that fast-paced revolution. We've become complacent, engaging in something that's called an act of cultural denial, which is a process where humans avoid uncomfortable realities like poverty, suffering, injustice, racial oppression. So in some ways, we've decided to look but not really see. A dangerous form of magical thinking often accompanies new technological developments. A curious assurance that revolution in our tools inevitably wipes the slate of the past clean. So this place of comfort and ignorance and complacency has led us where we are. We forgot our historical and social context. So it's necessary to have a hard look at how this neutral hacker culture has steered us toward a crisis of democracy and human rights. So I want to have a look at common ways of thinking that contributed to this crisis. The first one is move fast and break things, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard that before. Up until recently, that was the unofficial motto of social media giant Facebook, one of the most profitable companies that exist. Recently, it has changed to move fast with stable infra, and sure, it mostly refers to approach to software and reliable infrastructure, but in some ways, it has become a celebration of privilege and lack of responsibility in the early hacker culture. Apparently, Facebook admitted that sometimes it harms democracy, but honestly, they've shown little responsibility for that as well. lack of consideration for those real-life repercussions of technology and hunger for more data and exponential growth has had catastrophic results. Because disruption isn't a free card to bypass laws, freedoms, moral compass, civil rights, human protections. Speed doesn't warrant lack of responsibility. The second belief is saying that technology is neutral. And we've heard that multiple times. Technology is neutral, we should avoid politics. But technology is not, never will be, and never was neutral. Because people author software, and they design it with conscious and unknown biases baked in. So their prejudice, lack of education, inevitably will manifest itself in their software and their design. And it will impact people who use them. This myopic focus on what's new leads us to miss the important ways that digital tools are embedded in old systems of privilege and power. They reflect the current political climate. Classism, racism, homophobia, and amplify them tenfold, because the World Wide Web is a giant megaphone. The third reason is lacking ethical education. Because in many cases, the technology-oriented curriculum doesn't really include any kind of ethical training compared to other disciplines like law or medicine. The focus that we have on technical skills deprioritize psychology, social studies, ethics, communication skills, categorizing them as soft and unnecessary distraction. And that troubling dynamic really feeds into the stereotype of an introvert hacker who just wants to code and forgets that technology is built by and for humans. So I did a little survey. And sure, 7,000 responses isn't statistically significant, but it highlights a pattern, and a very troubling one. Most of the respondents highlighted their engineering or design degrees didn't include any ethics curriculum or subjects, or they were actually opt-in, they weren't mandatory. 67%, no ethics training whatsoever. And it's hard to imagine making informed decisions and having conversations about ethical implications in design and software if we are lacking foundational understanding of that subject. We have nothing to base on. And ethical decision-making is like a muscle that has to be exercised because it will atrophy. So the above examples of culture and algorithmic pitfalls of technology highlight that we really have to become fluent in ethical concerns to continue building that welcoming, respectful web that we all want. And we talked about this a little bit already, exclusion and homogeneity. Racial diversity is scarce, not mentioning LGBTQA representation or inclusion of people with disabilities. And the statistics only show that it's not getting any better despite all of the noise surrounding that subject and a lot of effort. And we cannot succeed making the web that's welcoming towards everyone if the platform is built with only a few with enough power and privilege that's backed by structural inequality. Because it is impossible to empathize, understand, and design for experiences we never had, never seen or never heard of, because those people are just not around us. They're not in our industry. We don't see them. We don't hear from them. That's why representation matters. And many design and engineering problems could be avoided if teams were more diverse. Diverse teams challenge biases, are more innovative and productive, and drive more positive business outcomes. So until everyone, no matter their ethnicity, socioeconomic background, gender, sexual orientation, ability, can enter and prevail in tech and use the products of tech comfortably and reliably, the web is not open and the web is not welcoming. So my question today is, how do we establish what's ethical? How do we build this welcoming web? And what does ethic mean? These are pretty big questions. To me, ethics really focuses on answering a question of should we. And ethics defends and recommends concepts of right and wrong conduct. And there is no code of ethics for the web. There have been attempts, there have been people who tried to write something for a certain group, a certain meetup, a certain organization, but there's nothing widely adopted. It's a very complex problem, and the web is so distributed. There's nothing addressing this problem. How do we figure this out? How do we figure out what's ethical? How do we figure out our values and guiding principles and what we built for the web? Well, I spent some time researching and trying to figure out what would my ethical principles be. And this is based on the actual Declaration of Human Rights and a few other resources that are relevant to our problems and the industry. And I hope they can guide us towards a better welcoming web. So the first ethical principle is human rights and democracy. Because it's not a question of when, but how technology is affecting democracy. And sure, tech can serve democracy really well, but it also has empowered authoritarian regimes to censor press, or track down dissenting citizens and actually enact legal repercussions on them. For example, in Turkey, Twitter users were trialed for sending some critical tweets about the current prime minister. Facebook discovered thousands of inauthentic ads that were affiliated with the Russian, with the election in 2016 that came from Russia, and they were meant to spread misinformation. Many algorithms, including Facebook and Google, help creating so-called filter bubbles. So we'll never see content that's disagreeable, which feeds in a phenomenon that's called confirmation bias. And it furthers our inability to make informed choices as citizens, challenge fake content. No surprise we live in a post-fact era. Just a few days ago, Google announced that it will be launching a censored version of their search engine in China, where they previously had no presence. So they will be collaborating with the government in oppression of the Chinese citizens. Amazon just promised unwavering commitment in providing facial recognition technology to US government after many other companies denied providing such services, knowing the repercussions of that. Because tech is supposed to support and improve the civic processes on which democratic societies depend. So what are the rules? What are the guiding principles for human rights and democracy and technology? Well, ethical technology should respect and extend human rights. It should serve and support democracy, not challenge it. Fight against the spread of misinformation, which is pretty rampant these days. And encourage civic engagement. The second ethical principle is well-being. We talked about social media and it affecting our mental health. And there are more studies that show that our cognitive capacity decreases as hyperconnectivity fosters attention deficit disorders. And often those social media services tap into tools creating addiction. Social alienation, anxiety, depression, stress, trouble sleeping are common side effects of this digital advancement. But that shouldn't be the case. Technology should be a mindful, quiet companion to our lives, helping us, rather than being an overbearing disruptor, hijacking our attention through complex interfaces and tricks and addiction patterns. And if you're interested in the concept of calm technology, I would strongly recommend Amber Case's book entitled Calm Technology and Center for Humane Technology, because they speak about that subject. So ethical technology in the spectrum of well-being should require minimum attention. Again, we want technology that's helping us and then moving out of our way. Ethical technologies should inform and create calm, should work in the background. Again, not hijacking our attention and our time that we might want to choose to spend otherwise. And respect societal norms. The third ethical principle is security and safety. And that can span over multiple dimensions, from reliability of software against hacking and ransomware to actual physical and emotional safety of its users. Data breaches have catastrophic consequences. And just in Australia alone, 2014-2015, over 700,000 people were affected by data breaches. 700,000 people. And those details that were leaked and stolen and obtained can be used to open bank accounts, get mortgages, put the victims of those breaches at risk of police raids, immigration issues, financial bottlenecks of different sorts for years to come. And in other scenarios, that stolen data might put victims of harassment and domestic abuse, or activists or whistleblowers at incredible risk of doxxing. So ethical technology in the spectrum of safety and security should respond promptly to crisis, eliminate single points of failure, and invest in cryptography and security practices, and most of all, protect the people who are most vulnerable. The next principle is responsibility and accountability. Tech workers and organizations have to be accountable for their creations, and they have to be liable for the potential damages they make on society. And this hasn't been the case. And that social impact should be estimated and measured with the same level of scrutiny and level of importance as delivering to your investors, or pushing new feature releases, or releasing a new product. And it has to be done on a continuous basis as well. Sure, significant of algorithms and AI rely on machine learning, but it is humans who put that system in place and design it. So it's us who should take ownership of those systemic flaws. And I think it's really important to realize that fundamental distinction and the fact that we can't put the blame on the software. Recently, Margaret Stewart, who's the VP of Design at Facebook, spoke about the 4 quadrants of design responsibility. And she explained how the liability of our designs rapidly grows as products turn into ecosystems used by thousands, if not millions, which is very relevant to the Facebook use case. But no matter where your work falls in those 4 quadrants, it's necessary to evaluate the potential impact. So ethical technology is aware of diverse social and cultural norms, creates policies for algorithmic accountability. How does responsibility look like? Collaborates with lawmakers to advance regulations. It is so hard to create regulations for this age of technology and advancement. The people who are creating those regulations really need our help in understanding technology and writing laws for technology to protect people. And complies with national and international guidelines. Data protection and privacy. Something really close to security and safety. The right to protection and control over our personal data is continually challenged. One of the examples of that is a service called Just Delete Me, which is a directory of web services, and those services are categorized by how hard it is to delete your account, or whether it's even possible to delete your account and your data associated with it. Open and closed-door surveillance has become the new norm, and it's challenging human rights even in Australia. Just recently, Peter Dutton was calling for a right to access emails, bank records, and text messages of citizens without a warrant and without the knowledge of the citizens. And that's very troubling. The data can be used to enhance user experience. It can be used for good, and it can provide useful services, but it can certainly be weaponized by algorithms authoritarian regimes and governments. As I've mentioned before, even creators of facial recognition technology are well aware of those repercussions, and they did decline to provide services to governments because they know and they understand what could happen. Sensitive data should be accessible to the users. You should be able to modify, restrict access, export, and delete. And Maciej Cegłowski talks about data collection in his talk, Hunted by Data, in a really great way. Don't collect it. If you have to collect it, don't store it. If you have to store it, don't keep it. And he calls for those minimal approaches to data collection and mindful short storage times. So ethical technology should only collect data that's necessary for operation. Do you really need somebody's phone number? I don't think so. Do you need their title? Do you need all of those details? You probably don't. Ethical technology gives full control of data, including permanent and swift deletion. Some services will remove your data after a month when you request that, and you do have to request that through email. That shouldn't be the case. Ethical technology allows some level of anonymity, which is very helpful to whistleblowers, activists, members of underrepresented groups. The next ethical principle is transparency. Because ethical design is transparent as has nothing to hide. And disclosing information on how services operate, how data is gathered, stored, and used really improves trustworthiness and mitigates misuse of that data. Often people who use our software and designs and products are not fully informed how they work. They don't understand how the services affect them. Software is a black box, and they don't understand its decisions. Those decisions cannot be explained. So that lack of clarity increases the risk and magnitude of harm, as well as lowers the chances of any responsibility and forensic accountability, because there are no governing bodies over privately held tech companies and startups. So those algorithms and software makes choices that cannot be disputed or challenged, because how would we do that? So ethical technology responsibly discloses abuses of software. We already talked about Uber and about companies that didn't disclose data breaches until a year later. This should be disclosed timely and transparently. Establishes clear rules for reporting and accountability. How can I report a breach? What is my job as a tech company or a tech service? How will I react to this? What is the process? What can you expect from me? And thinking about mission and value statements. What is my mission? What do I present as a company, as an employee, as an individual? That transparency is crucial. The next ethical principle is misuse and bias awareness. You might have heard of Eric Meyer, who is a very prominent designer and a front-end developer. A few years ago, he wrote this article that was entitled Inadvertent Algorithmic Cruelty, and he described his absolutely horrific experience with Facebook's year in review that treated the death of his daughter, Rebecca, as a highlight of his year. In 2016, Microsoft released Tay, which was an artificial intelligence chatbot on Twitter, which in less than 24 hours turned completely racist and misogynistic and had to be taken down. Software that's called Compass, that's used to predict future crimes and chance of recidivism, has been proven by ProPublica to falsely flag Black defendants as future criminals at twice the rate compared to white defendants, simultaneously mislabeling white suspects as low risk. And these are just 3 examples. Algorithms are thoughtless because software is written by people and does reflect their ideology, biases, thought processes, beliefs. And so often we test for those positive cases, successful use cases. We forget about malice, empathetic design, and more importantly, the social context that we're embedded in. Because software doesn't learn, we teach the software. Technologies and their design do not dictate racial technologies. Rather, they reflect the current climate. So ethical technology is aware and combats unconscious bias. Tests for misuse and malice. How can this product fail? How can somebody use this to exploit data? How can somebody use this to harass the users of this application? How can the software fail? Ethical technology fights against harmful societal inequalities. And the last ethical principle is something that I've talked about quite a bit, and is diversity inclusion. So the lack of diversity inclusion is one of the reasons why we find ourselves at such a crisis. And increasing diversity inclusion is something that will help us to build a more welcoming, ethical web. If our teams, organizations, conferences, friendship groups were less homogeneous, technological redlining in the form of algorithms reinforcing oppressive social norms and enacting racial profiling might have been much less significant. Because anyone, no matter their background, their race, their gender, level of ability, deserves equality and equity. When automated decision-making tools are not built to explicitly dismantle structural inequalities, their speed and scale intensifies them. Because if our systems are not effectively and actively fighting exclusion, they're reinforcing it. If you're doing nothing, you're reinforcing it. So in that sense, ethical technology is inclusive of all people. It prioritizes diverse teams and organizations. It prevents that technological redlining that we just talked about and the examples that we've seen. So how do we go about these principles? There's a lot of take on, there are a lot of principles to be focusing on. Surely there are some tools, some resources that can help me in focusing on ethics and building a welcoming web. Last year's yielded quite a few books on algorithmic bias and the state of the tech industry. Some of them include Weapons of Mass Destruction, Automating Inequality, Algorithms of Oppression, Technically Wrong, or Reset by Ellen Powell. And these are fantastic resources that will let you understand more about algorithmic bias, about the impact of technology, and how to address that problem. There are some fun projects, like the Tarot Cards of Tech, which is a deck of tarot cards with amazing questions and prompts about ethics and moral compass that will let you make more informed choices. There are more structured resources, such as the Ethical Thinking Workshop that you can use at your organization in a very effective way that will guide you through making those ethical principles be at the core of everything you do, whether it's software, design, business decision making. And as much as manifestos and value statements mean nothing if you don't implement them and if you don't commit to actionable goals, they can serve as a great source of inspiration and education. And this is an example from Indie, Ethical Design Manifesto. There's a company that's really committed to building an ethical web. And there are many more out there. Designer's Oath is one of them. And there's basically an endless list of resources that could be at your disposal to think, what are my principles as a company or as an individual? How do I start? Maybe setting those principles will be a great beginning to establishing this ethical, welcoming web practice. So I've shared a quote at the very beginning of this talk, and I didn't attribute it. And I want to come back to it. The anti-human web. And if you don't remember, Sir Berners-Lee is the man who literally invented the World Wide Web. And his recent interview with Vanity Fair, he expressed very negative feelings and the fact that he's devastated by the state of the web and what the web has become. But at the same time, though, he is hopeful about the future. He thinks we can turn this ship around. And I think so too. And that's why I'm talking about this, and that's why I'm here today. Because I can see this shift towards more humane technology, people-first design, empathy. It is happening. But it does need your help. Because our common enemy is complacency and turning away. It needs your help, every single one of us in this room. No matter what your job title is, whether you're a freelancer, employee, business owner, CEO, you can be anyone. But it's your responsibility and your accountability for the culture and technology you build. We are all responsible for what the web has become today, and it will become tomorrow. For this reason, it is crucial to understand those ethical challenges that we talked about. Just because we have a capacity to build something, to design something, with the use of technology, we can fulfill our dreams with technology. But it doesn't mean we should. That focus on chasing disruption makes us forget that those digital tools are embedded in old systems of power and privilege. And those systems have to be challenged. The web shouldn't be negative. The web shouldn't be oppressive. The web shouldn't lead us to anxiety and depression and those negative places. It shouldn't compromise humanity. The web should enhance our lives, fulfill our dreams, not magnify our fears, deepen our divisions. So today, I'm inviting you to carefully think about our responsibilities and the ramifications of the work we do in the web today. I urge you to take action. Let's build a better future together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karolina.
I'm just going to be here like playing with dongles, sorry.
That was amazing. I really, really enjoyed the talk. My main takeaway from it, I love the vision of having like ethical technology that helps all of us equally and enhances our lives and fulfills our dreams, because that's an amazing vision, isn't it? And I guess what I took from that is that all of us have a role to play and I guess a responsibility in making this happen. And like everyone in this room does, right? Because we're all part of the tech industry.
Yeah, it's really remembered that it's not only the CEOs, or you don't have to be a company owner, or someone doesn't have to consider you an important person. It's every single one of you. If each one of us leaves this room and does something ethical or changes their values, or
making the industry better day by day.
The industry will be better day by day.
I also loved don't collect it, don't store it, don't keep it, because it's very simple, but it's very effective. That's cool. And I think, if all of us can help turn the ship around and make Tim Berners-Lee proud, then
we can do this. Make Tim Berners-Lee proud.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karolina.